try to explain it this way. I'm talking about block starts and acceleration, all right? So when we teach the kids to, as they exit the blocks, to have real low heel recovery, okay? The reason is, you know how some kids, if this is the block pad and this is where their first step, they'll do it like this, right? Well, I always try to tell them that when you're at zero velocity and you're starting, the quickest way to get from here to here is in a straight line, not in a half moon circle, you know what I'm saying? So we start out by, in order to do that, all the work's being done in the hips. There's no additional flexion takes place in the knee joint. You follow me? All right. So we do this drill, and what it is we have big cone and little cone. So what I do is I'll teach them to do straight leg bounds, because when you're doing straight leg bounds, you're doing everything with your hips, right? So they'll go from this first 10 meters, they're just doing a straight leg bound, okay? And then the next 10 meters, we call it kind of like you're exiting the blocks then, low heel recovery. So it's almost like a shuffle. They'll bend their knee just a little bit, for the next 10 meters. And then the next 10 meters after that, then we're making that transition. And then the next 10 meters, it's, good front side mechanics, nothing behind them. So it's just a method of trying to teach them, just try to get them to understand the proper way to accelerate, basically, is what we're trying to do. So when we're doing that, we also have some target times. So I'm gonna move on to this sheet then, because this would be the next sheet. We call it our stick drill. Yeah, you come over and you can pick up all this stuff. Stick drill. Basically, the stick drill is where we're trying to teach them to accelerate in 5 centimeter increments. Does that make sense? 5 centimeter increments. So, they're starting out. We're trying to on the first step, we're trying to cover X number of centimeters, which is usually about 0.60 centimeters. 60 centimeters is what we're trying to get done on the first step, and then 5 centimeters more each step. So we go out on this drill. We go out about 12 steps. You can see the sticks. You know what we use as sticks is we use, there's 2 different things you can use. They're real cheap. We used to have at the university in the admin building these Venetian blinds. They were plastic. They weren't metal. They were plastic. And so I just had the managers, we just cut them up. You know what I'm saying? Made them the width 36 inches or 48, whatever the lane was, is what we made them. And we would set those sticks down at each one of these. That way, if they stepped on it, it's no big deal. The other thing that we use that works good is if you have the tape. What's it called?
Athletic tape?
No, well, athletic tape doesn't work as good as, what's the next kind of tape?
KT?
Pardon?
KT?
Well, whatever it's called. It's like, I've lost my mind. I can't think what kind of tape it is.
Like duct tape or something?
Duct tape. There you go. Duct tape. We use white duct tape, and we'll take and we'll put about. We have a jig. We took a board and we put 2 screws up, 48 inches apart, and the managers just jig it, and it's probably 5 or 6 layers thick, and we just lay those out. That way, if they step on it, nobody gets hurt. You just pick it up and put it back. And so the stick drill, what we've done, and I could actually show you out on our track. Over on the outside lane on the straightaway over there, you'll see a little red triangle. So it's easy to set up. The managers just come out, the red triangles are there, and they just lay the sticks down, and we do the stick drill. Now, I can tell you this, that we probably do, in a session on stick drill, we'll probably do a minimum of probably 4 to 6 accelerations that way, and I have cones out there at like 30 meters and 40 meters. So they're going through the sticks, which is going to take them X amount of meters to get through the sticks, which is about 16 meters. Then they go ahead and make the transition, and then they finish the last 10 meters with really good front side mechanics. And by front side mechanics, I'm talking about none of that butt kicking stuff, And I always try to tell them, and we're talking about maximum velocity sprinting, that you have to get good front side mechanics and try to get the thigh parallel. Why? Because the higher your foot's off the ground, the more power you can put back down, and the quicker you're going to get back off the track. Because if you think about it, the 2 things that make, or the 3 things that make you fast is stride length, stride rate, and ground contact time. So we're always constantly trying to work on reducing ground contact time, and if you do that, you're increasing frequencies. That makes sense? So, but during acceleration, we're pushing really hard, but after that, it's about, I give them the example after that, you're trying to run barefoot on hot coals. You really want to keep your toe up, and you really want to strike the track hard, and you want to recover it real quick. Well, when they do that, they'll strike, and then instead of this action, where the heel goes all the way up to the butt, you know what I'm saying? They'll hit and almost pull it straight back up. It's quicker, than when the heel gets all the way up to the butt, and then it's got to totally unrecoil on the front side. More than likely, they're going to be overstride and they're going to be reaching. Okay. Now there's a little bit of, I'm exaggerating a little, but we try to exaggerate on all the drills that we do, so that then when they get into a race, mechanically they're a lot more efficient. So this is early, okay. Then this comes a little later in the training. How long? Well, we'll do this for probably the first, at least for the first 4 weeks of training in the fall, and we do it every Monday. And they'll do X number of reps on Monday doing this, and I'll pull some of this up for you here on the computer here in a minute. And then of course, then we graduate from this to this, where we're doing the stick drill. We do the stick drill all year long. Every Monday they're going to do the stick drill pretty much. That's part of acceleration and rehearsal. And I don't know if you watch our women and you watch our men, quite honestly. We've had the last, 4 different individual NCAA 100-meter champion women, and it's always been a different woman. It's not like the same woman doing it all the time. And I attribute all of that just because we just ingrain in them the good acceleration mechanics. I mean, if you get out and you're in front, it's easy to run relaxed, and, not to say that we don't have some talented people. I mean, that helps too, to be real honest with you. But that's what this is all about, okay? Acceleration work. So those two are kind of married to one another. So then we get this. Let's talk about this for a minute, all right? Now, so we're working on acceleration mechanics, at least 2 or 3 times a week, all right? We're not necessarily doing these same drills, but we're doing things. Now, in conjunction with this, we call it contrast training. So let's move on now from a Monday, and let me go through a typical Thursday for you, all right? Thursday for you. Thursday is going to be a combination of things. It's going to be what we call contrast training. That would be if we're having a Saturday meet, or if we're in the fall and we're not competing, we do this on Thursdays. Thursday, basically, they're going to be doing some sled pulls, okay? The sled pulls are for acceleration. We had some aluminum sleds made that slide easily on the track and don't damage the track. And for the women, I think usually we're putting about 3.5 kilos onto the sled, and they're pulling the sled. They'll pull the sled for 50 meters. I mean, it's a very aggressive pull, okay? For the men, we're usually adding another couple kilos onto it for the men when they're doing the sled pulls. They do those sled pulls, they'll do about 3 of them. So they'll do a sled pull for 50 meters, and it's like teams of 3, you know what I'm saying? So one pulls down, one pulls back, and one pulls back, and then we start all over again, okay? So they'll do about 2 or 3 of those sled pulls.
So the rest is built in?
Yeah, well, the rest is built in, yeah, exactly. When you do a team of 3,
right.
And then what we do from there is, then we go to block starts, okay? Block starts. So then, on Thursday, we'll do probably, I would say, 4 or 5 individual block sessions where they'll do 4 or 5 starts. Basically, on that, the first one I tell them, okay, set your blocks, and you do it your solo. You're just going by yourself. And then everything after that is competitive starts, where I'm starting them as a group. And we have cones out all the time when we're doing acceleration work, or even in our warm-up. We always have cones out every 10 meters, so they know, okay, here's 10, 20, 30, because we're trying to teach the block exit, we're trying to teach the transition, and we're trying to teach good front side mechanics. So I want them to end everything with the good front side, even if it's just 2 or 3 strides, okay? So that's what we do on Thursday. Then we get into this. After we've done that, we call it ins and outs. And I don't know that that's a good word. I think strike, fly, and float is a better way of describing it. It's just that we've always said in and outs. All right, so what is this drill? Well, let me also, and I think this explains the progression. If you look at this, They're accelerating from a 3-point stance. We do everything down on the ground. A 3-point stance, they're accelerating for about 25 meters. And then what we call a 10-meter fly. That's where we're talking about that good front side mechanics, and it's like 100% effort, okay? Then the next 20 meters, they're gonna kind of float through, okay? By float, I don't think that's a good word, all right? But I guess I've been able to relay to them what we want. So it's not like you're slowing down, you're just really relaxing and sprinting, but you really don't slow down. I think when you say float sometimes, they think they slow down. So you gotta come up with your own words to describe it. And then you get back into the 10-meter fly again. You know, they hit it hard. Okay, so you notice that it's 10 meters fly and 20 meters float. We do that for about a month, 4 weeks, okay? Then after 4 weeks, then we're gonna go 15 meters and 15. The philosophy is this: you gotta teach a kid to run fast for a short distance before you teach them to run fast for a long distance. Make sense? So then we're gonna progress where we're gonna go, and we're gonna go that 15-15. We're gonna do that for about 4 weeks. Our training for the whole year is set up on 4-week cycles, okay? So week 1 is kinda hard. Week 2's, when I say hard, I'm talking about volume and intensities combined, okay? Week 2's a little more higher volume. Week 3's a little higher volume, and then week 4 is back way down. And then we go the next 4-week cycle, and you know, you're starting a little higher now. It's kind of like you're walking up the ladder, you know, and now instead of starting at the bottom, you're starting in that second cycle, you're starting on the first step, and we just keep going throughout the year, okay? So if you look here, as I explained, this is 4 weeks. This first segment is another 4 weeks, so we're already 8 weeks into the off season. You see what I mean? So we're into October. Then you get into November, and it's that 15 meters and 15-meter fly. You see what I mean? And then when we get into December, we're the rest of the year when we do our, what we call in and outs. You can call it whatever you want, but we go 20 meters, all right, fly with a 10-meter relaxed and 20-meter fly. We have, when we train, we have a group 1, which is 100, 200-meter people. We have a group 1H, which is 100-meter hurdlers. We have a group 2, which is our 400-meter people. And then we have a group 2H, which is our 400 hurdlers. Does that make sense? And then once in a while in my group, because I coach all the sprints and hurdles with a couple of my very good assistant coaches, all right, I want to give them credit. But the bottom line is that we also have a group 3, because one year I coached an 800-meter female that was also a great 4x4 relay person. She won the NCAA championship at 800 meters. So we have a group 3 on our workouts that I'll show later, but we don't always have somebody that fits into that category. Sometimes we'll have a quarter miler, like we have a girl by the name of Journey Woodward that's on our team, and she's from California, and Journey, I think, could be a marathoner and run the same pace from, you know, the 100 all the way through the marathon. You know what I'm saying? She doesn't have natural speed. And so sometimes we'll up her volume some. Naturally, we're trying to improve her speed, but the reality of it is God didn't bless her like he blessed some other people with speed. So she'll go out and she'll run you know, a 53 split on our relay, but we always time the first 200 and the second 200 of the 400, and she's really almost even, you know what I'm saying? Where reality is that, as we'll explain a little bit later, the perfect, how do I want to say, the perfect distribution on that would be where the first 200 is 2 seconds 2 seconds faster than the second 200. Does that make sense? And also when you're running the 400, and we'll go over race distribution here in a little bit, but you know, we base everything off of their 200-meter speed, okay? So early in the season, we'll run almost all of our 400-meter people in a 200 to see, well, just how fast are you? Then we'll add a second to that. So let's say somebody ran 24 flat, female run 24 flat. That means we would expect to get them, if we're training them correctly, they should run in a 400, they should be 25 and come back indoors probably in 28 and run 53 flat. 3 seconds difference between the first 2 and the second 2. Indoors, as you well know, it's a little bit more difficult because you don't run in your lanes all the way, and sometimes the race dictates how things get set up. But in an ideal world, we want it to be 3 seconds difference, all right? If somebody's constantly running and it's 4 seconds difference, well, then we realize that, you know, based upon their 200 meter speed, we've got to do a lot more special endurance work with that person, all right? You know, because we know what kind of speed they've got, but they don't have the strength to come back and run that second 200 like what we would like to see them do. Outdoors, we're looking at 2 seconds difference, you know, in the really elite runners. You know, in high school, I wouldn't have a clue what it would be, to be real honest with you. But, you know, that's what we're always shooting for is outdoors, that 25 flat that then goes to work and runs 27.5 and comes back, you know, on the women's side. And our really good people, that's what they end up doing, and the men's the same way. You know, if you take like a Vernon Norwood, which many of you might be familiar with Vernon being a high schooler here in the state, you know, Vernon didn't have very good 200 meter speed. First he went to junior college, then he comes to us. We only got 2 years to get him going like we want him to get going. And he was one of those guys that, you know, he was almost like just a 21 flat guy is all he could run the 200 in. So, you know, but that would be 22 and 24 and run 46 flat. But he ran 44 something, you know what I'm saying? So we knew he had excellent speed endurance, but he just didn't have any speed. You know, I could run Vernon all day out there and sprint stuff, and he's never gonna, you know, he's probably at best gonna be a 20-60 guy, you know, in the open too. But yet he can run 40, he's run 44.4. So, you know, we'd still work on speed stuff, but, you know, it's kind of interesting. I got an email, you know who Wayne Van Kirk is, the world record holder in the 400 meters, right? So he's friends with Garner. So he's gonna come running our alumni gold meet, the Olympic, or the world record holder in the 400s coming to run in our outdoor meet this spring. And we might have another world record holder if I can get Mondo to vault. Been keeping up with Mondo?
Oh, yeah. Keeps on breaking.
Track fan, yeah. It's funny, so Mondo's mother, Helena, traveled over to Europe for the first couple meets when he set the world record at 6:17 and then 6:18. And Greg is one of my volunteer assistants, so Greg was here. Then Greg goes over there for the meet in France the other day, and freaking Mondo can't break the world record. So I text Greg, I said, shit, you should have stayed. You should have stayed here and left Helena over there. You can't coach with the shit, you know? All right, so then let's go over this race distribution thing that I just talked a little bit about. So if you look at the 200, you know, projected best that the person can run, we base it on more on what they actually have done, not the projection. We'll run them in the 200, and then you can see kind of how the first 100 and the second 100 and the third 100. We have a program called Dartfish. Have you ever heard of it? Dartfish is a software program. If you get into video analysis stuff, I would highly recommend that program. Dartfish, we use Dartfish, and we can time, we video all of the things in meets, and we video oftentimes in practice, and we can break down every 100 meters, every 50 meters, whatever there's a mark on the track, we can break it down for them, you know, which is really important. In practice, when the guys are running, let's say, we call it race modeling, so maybe we'll have Vernon running a 300 in practice, and it's a race model. You know, we're trying to run race pace for 300. Well, we'll time the first 100 and the second 100 and see if he's following along this chart with based upon what his actual goal is, you know, for that season. You know, the bottom line is that we just do a lot of timing in practice and give them a good idea, even when we're running these 30-meter, 60-meter flies and things like that. We have electronic timing, so we're pretty accurate about what's going on. And I can almost tell somebody, you know, under good conditions, you should be able to run this fast just based on your training, you know. And so anyway, these charts come in extremely good for us. Let's talk about this now. This chart, can you look at this chart real quick? This is an energy system training. All of our training design is based on the energy systems. All right, so as I'm trying to explain this to you, what I can tell you is that every one of my workouts, you know, I identify exactly what it is that they're trying to do in that session. The bottom line is, if we're working on, let's say we're working on absolute speed, well, that means the efforts are going to be anywhere from 20 to 80 meters. They're never going to be any farther than that in the training session. And then over here, if you look, the percentage, well, it's either gonna be anywhere between 90 and 100% effort. And then you look over here at the number of reps and the amount of, or the number, the rest and the interval that I'm gonna give them between those efforts. Listen, I can assure you this. When I first started coaching, which was a long time ago at a junior college, I had a couple, 3 kids that I got hurt. They strained their hamstrings because I didn't know what I was doing. You live off this chart, you'll hardly ever get anybody hurt. If you know, there's always that temptation sometime, well, let's do one more. Your gut tells you we shouldn't do one more. You know what I'm getting at? So my thing is this, if we're trying to do a certain workout and they're running faster, let's say I want them to do 4 reps, and they're running a lot faster than what I wanted them to run, then it's only gonna be 3 reps. You see what I'm getting at? You know, and there's always gonna be that, and the kid's gonna tell you, oh, I'm good, you know what I'm saying? And then you let them go and your gut tells you, no, don't go, but you let them go and then they get hurt. You see where I'm coming? So there's a lot of that intuition that you gotta have about what they should and shouldn't do. You know, much like in you guys, I know like in our situation, you know, when we're at midterm exams, final exams, you know, we got to be careful, more careful than we do at other times of the year, because I always tell the kids, you know, your body doesn't know the difference between the stress of your girlfriend or boyfriend, the stress of school, and the stress of training. Your body doesn't know the difference. Stress is stress. And so if you're stressed out about something outside of what we're doing, you got to communicate that, because it may alter the approach that I'm going to take with you that day in training. And our kids are pretty good about that, you know, and you know, we're fortunate enough that we don't have the kind of kids that want to get out of work. You probably do, you know what I'm saying? Our kids all want to be great. So, you know, we have that opposite, where we're putting the reins on them instead of having to try to kick them in the butt and get them to do what we want them to do in training. So, you know, I know everybody's got a kind of their own set, we got our set of problems too, don't get me wrong. But does that make sense? You got to kind of, you know, trust. There's got to be a good, it's like Aaliyah Armstrong. You know who Aaliyah Armstrong is? Maybe the freshman girl is from New Orleans. It's running really well for us. As a matter of fact, she would have set the world under 20 record for the 60-meter hurdles the other day, but she's 3 days too old. You know, because she ran faster than anybody's ever run. She ran 7:95 in the 60-meter hurdles the other day. So I guess my point is that in her case, as you do those kind of things, and then the expectations get higher, right? And when the expectations get higher, there's more pressure. And when there's more pressure, they respond to it in some way, you know? And so it's always been interesting, you know, that on kids like that, I just grab them and said, hey, it's easy to do it the first time. It's a lot harder to do it you know, every time, you know? So, you know, you better just start recognizing that the expectations are going to be high, you know, so that she understands, you know, at the end of the day, don't come to me and tell me my hammy's tight, you know, because you're afraid the SEC meet's just coming up. You understand what I'm getting at? So you gotta prep them. You gotta stay on top of what it is that's happening. So.
Sorry, I got their pull up.
Okay, yeah, well, good luck with that.
Thank you very
much. But anyway, the energy system, I live and die with the design of the workouts on here, and I'm gonna show you that in a minute. All right, we're gonna shift gears now. I think we do some hurdling here. You guys interested in hurdling? All right, so I tell them, here's the deal. This is how many strides. 99% of the people that run the hurdles, this is the number of strides that they take in the hurdle race. So the person that spends the least amount of time on the ground is always going to win the race, even if you're a crappy hurdler. You know what I'm saying? So the bottom line is that we do a ton of hurdling in practice. We reduce the distance between the hurdles almost always in practice. We reduce the height of the hurdle almost always in practice. Sometimes we'll put a foam pad on the top of the 30-inch for the women and the 39-inch for the men, so that they do hit it. You know, we're not, you know, bruising the knee or you know, or banging the ankle. You know how that goes. So, but people ask me a lot of times about, well, what kind of drills do you do in hurdling? Well, you know, and I ain't lying, we literally hardly none. the bottom line is that people can master drills when you're going through the drill at, 10% kind of pace, and it ain't like maximum velocity sprint hurdling, all right? So from our standpoint, when we're doing practice, we're doing hurdle drills that are 100% efforts over the hurdles. I manipulate the hurdles to help each kid work on something that I want them to work on. Sometimes we'll do 10 steps instead of the normal 8 steps to the first hurdle so that the velocity gets higher and the first hurdle comes up quicker. You see what I'm getting at? Sometimes we'll go 8 steps to the first hurdle, and then we'll go 3-step for the next 2 hurdles, and then we go 5-step. So where the velocity gets higher, and we always finish with 3 steps at the end. When we get outdoors, we do 12 hurdle runs, over 12 hurdles. And sometimes over those 12 hurdles, there'll be a 5-step thrown in there somewhere to where they really get going. Because in hurdling, what the kids have to understand is that, especially the elite people, the faster they feel like they're coming up, the faster you have to run. You can't put the brakes on, you just got to go with it. So that's why we reduce the hurdles, to get them to understand and get the feel of what it's like for the hurdles to come up really quick for them, So a lot of different things that we just manipulate it around, and a lot of times I find, and the reason that I do that is because I think that if you just go out and you're doing the same thing all the time, you don't get the same kind of focus and the same kind of intensity that you do when you start changing things up on them. Because the second you throw a 5-step out there for them, man, they got to be thinking, or else they're gonna overstride into it and they're gonna hit the hurdle, So we're constantly trying to adapt. We're trying to change quite honestly, the central nervous system is what controls all of that. We're trying to change it up to where they don't get caught into a 13 flat pace or something, We're trying to manipulate the hurdles to try to constantly challenge the central nervous system in hurdling. This is a sheet that we have, like for example, when we're going to the first hurdle and over the first hurdle, we always have tape down on the track for every stride, exactly where their foot's supposed to land. And of course, we're videoing that, and we show them so that they recognize that they're accelerating correctly, which is similar to what I talked about with the sprinters and about how we want them to accelerate at that 5-centimeter increment. Of course, with the hurdles a little different, as you can see here, what we tried to do with all of our hurdlers. So that's that. Let me try to pull up something on the computer, and maybe hopefully you'll be able to see it, even if you got to get up and look at it. So I'm going to go with like early season week 5 and just show you. Can you guys see this? Can you see that? All right, so this is like a typical, all right, first of all, I can just tell you this, our kids get this on Monday. They know what they're doing Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. They know what they're supposed to do in practice, all right? But before that, they get in our booklet, they're gonna get a series of menus, and I probably ought to show you that first, now that I'm thinking about it. Let me see if I can find my menu here.